Hi, everyone. So, today we are going to be talking all about how a U.S. citizen can petition for their parent if the parent came into the US without a visa. So if the parent entered through the border um, and they didn't come in with a visa, how can you still file for them? Because again, it's a different situation. So that's what we're going to be covering today. I'm also going to give you a little advanced strategy of how you can make your parent still qualify for the green card by taking a little step, right? An extra step. So we're going to be going over all of that. If you are interested, stick around. I am Lillian Chukura. I help people, individuals, families learn all about US immigration, especially if you want to immigrate to the United States. I help you learn how to get a green card, how to get a citizenship in the US. If this sounds interesting to you, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel, like the video, share this video. And if you want to speak with me privately about your particular case, please feel free to do so by calling my office at 508-443-1788 or by going to my website, lilylegal.com. This is strategies you can use in your case, and you should. I'm giving you information on these strategies, but you should be talking to an immigration lawyer because these are, this is the advanced stuff. So you want to make sure that you are putting the best foot forward, you are doing your application correctly. So, without any more talking, let's get into it. So, the first thing I want to cover is who does this even apply to? So, if your parent came into the US without a visa, then this is for you, right? They came in either through the border, they came in without a visa, or they came in with a visa that wasn't theirs. This applies to you, okay? So, if you are now a US citizen, remember, only US citizens over 21 can file for their parent. So if you watch my last video on how to file for a parent that overstayed their visa, you'll already know that fact. And if you haven't watched that video, you can go ahead and watch that. But US citizen over 21 can file for a parent. The wrinkle here is if the parent entered without a visa, there's an extra step that you will need to do. Okay. If the parent entered without any sort of visa, even if it's a visa in someone else's name, if they enter without any sort of visa, they cannot get a green card in the US by you, their US citizen child, filing for them. This is the unfortunate part, and I hope Congress fixes this one day. But as of today, if you enter the US without a visa, you are not able to get a green card in the US. You will have to go to an interview at your embassy before you can get a green card. So there is definitely an extra step that you have to take there. So how can you actually go through this process, right? What can you actually do? In order for your parent to get that green card, they need to qualify for a waiver. This is basically, they need to qualify for a waiver. The waiver is based on having a qualifying relative. Now, this is the hard part about this waiver. And this is also where the advanced strategy comes in. Because in order to qualify for the waiver, you need a qualifying relative. Your qualifying relative has to be either a US citizen or permanent resident parent or US citizen or permanent resident spouse. Okay, either a parent or a spouse. Unfortunately, children do not count for a qualifying relative for these provisional waivers. So, entered without any sort of documentation, you need a waiver, basically asking the US government, to allow you to get a green card, even though you broke the law, right? And that waiver is based on extreme hardship to your US citizen or permanent resident parent or spouse. So if your parent does not have a US citizen parent or spouse, or permanent resident parent or spouse, then they will be in a position where they're not able to get a green card through you. There are other options out there for them, but to get a green card directly through you may not be an option. Again, there's an advanced strategy, so stick around for that. Now, if they do have a US citizen or permanent resident parent or spouse, then they can file for a provisional waiver. So basically, the provisional waiver, where would this really apply? Because I know you're thinking, okay, if they need a US citizen, if they have a US citizen parent, why don't the parent just file for them and then they can apply for the waiver based on the parent? Well, well, if I'm guessing, if you're 21, that means if you're over 21, that means your parent is over 21 as well. And it means that if their parent, that's now a permanent resident or a US citizen, wants to file for them, the processing time, the waiting time for a visa to become available for a child over 21 of a US citizen is about 7 years. You heard me. It's about 7 years. So if you are going to wait for your grandparent, that's now a US citizen or permanent resident, to file for your parent, for them to get the visa, you're going to be waiting at least 7 years for a visa to become available, for you then to qualify to apply for a waiver, to then apply to get the actual visa. Okay. So if you don't want to wait for the 7 years, you as a US citizen can file for your parent, file an I-130, a relative petition for your parent. That relative petition right now is taking about a year to a year and a half, depending on the processing center that has the case. Okay. So that's a year to a year and a half for a visa to become available. Because they're US, because your parents, they are parents of a US citizen, there's a visa immediately available. So it's just about USCIS processing the case. So they process the case. It may take them a year to a year and a half, but now they qualify. Once that I-130 is approved, they can apply for the waiver. Once the waiver is approved, they can then get an interview at the embassy, leave the US, go to their interview with their waiver in hand, and then come back in. Again, this is advanced strategy, okay? This is advanced. So you should not be going through this process yourself. I do not recommend it. However, I am going to explain the process to you so that you know what to expect when you're working with a lawyer. To work through this. So you file an I-130, you wait for the I-130 to be approved, then you apply for the waiver. Now, because your parent has a parent that's a US citizen or permanent resident, they qualify for the waiver based on extreme hardship to their parents. Now, remember, we're doing it this way, right? We're having you, the US citizen child, file for your parents so that the time that you're waiting for a visa to be available, for the interview to become available, is going to be significantly shorter than if the US citizen parents, your US citizen grandparent, files for your parent. Okay, so that's why that's the way to do it, is to have the child file for the parents, and now the grandparent becomes the qualifying relative for the waiver, right? So you have those two things going on. Now the question becomes, right, and I always get this question, what if the parent does not have a US citizen or permanent resident parent of their own? What if there's no grandparents in this situation? Well, do they have a spouse? Okay. Do they have a spouse? If they have a spouse that's a US citizen or permanent resident, technically the spouse can file for them to get their green card, right? Because the spouse is a qualifying relative for the waiver, the spouse can file the I-130, be the qualifying relative for the waiver, and then have the your parent go to their interview and come back, right? So it can work that way. So instead of you filing, the spouse can file. But what if, right? There's so many questions that come up with this. What if your parent is married, but the person they're married to came in with a visa and overstayed? What then? Right? They don't have status. So the person they're married to also doesn't have status, but they came in with a visa. What can you do in that situation? Well, well, it depends. So if the person they're married to, again, advanced advanced strategy. If the person they're married to came in with a visa and they got married before you turned 18, you can file for their spouse to get their green card in the US. Okay? You can file for their spouse to get their green card in the US. And if they get their green card in the US, guess what? Your parent now has a qualifying relative for the waiver. You catch the advanced strategy here? So let me repeat that for you. So you have a parent, let's say your mother, entered the US without a visa. So they had an undocumented entry into the US, and you want to file for them. Your mother's married to your stepdad, and your stepfather also doesn't have a visa, doesn't have a green card or citizenship in the US, but they entered the US with a visa, right? They had a legal entry into the US. Your parents, your mom, and your stepfather got married before you turned 18. So now your stepfather qualifies as a stepfather for immigration purposes. So what can you do? You can now file a green card application for your stepfather. You can file an I-130 for your mother, right? So, advanced strategy. You file a full green card application for your stepfather that entered with a visa, that got married to your mother before you turned 18. You can file for them to get their green card in the US. At the same time, you're filing for your mother's I-130. Remember, I said the I-130 is the first step in this process. Okay, so you file an I-130 for your mother. It takes about a year to a year and a half to process and be approved. The green card application for your stepfather also takes about, depending on where you live, it can take about a year to a year and a half. It can be longer depending on jurisdiction, right? Fine. Your stepfather's application for green card is processing. The I-130 for your mother is processing. Once the green card application for your stepfather is approved, your mom that did not have a qualifying relative for a waiver. Remember, I said the waiver requires a qualifying relative, which is either a US citizen or permanent resident parent or spouse. So before you filed for your stepfather, your mother did not have a qualifying relative. But now that you file for them, they get their green card. Your mama, surprise, now has a qualifying relative for the waiver. You already started the I-130 process, which means If once that gets approved, you can move on to the second step of the waiver. Now your stepfather's green card is approved. They are now a qualifying relative for the waiver. You can move forward with the waiver for your mother instead of waiting. So the other option is just to file for your stepfather, wait for that to be approved, have your stepfather file for your mother, wait for that I-130 to be approved, then file the waiver, wait for that to be approved, and then go. But advanced strategy, you file for both of them at the same time, wait for the processing time to run, get the green card, file the waiver, wait for the waiver to be approved, and then go ahead and file to get the interview at the embassy. Go to the interview at the embassy. Your mother comes in with a green card. So that's how that would work. If they didn't have a qualifying relative to start with, but they're married to someone that can get a green card in the US without needing a waiver. Okay, so that's the advanced strategy. Can you file for a parent that entered without a visa? Yes, you can, as long as they have a qualifying relative for the extreme hardship waiver. Again, I said there's other options for people that entered without a visa. Okay, there's other options for people that entered without a visa, depending on their particular situation. You can always reach out to me if you want to discuss what those other options are. If you want me to do a separate video, on what those other options can be, how someone that entered without a visa can get a green card, when they are not the parent of a US citizen, right? If they're not a parent of the US citizen and they do not have a qualifying relative, what other options are available to them? Just let me know in the comments and I can do another video on that. If you have any questions about the things I've talked about in this video, again, we talked about how a parent of a US citizen can get a visa, even if they enter the US without a visa, which is the parent needs to have a qualifying relative for the provisional waiver, which is basically based on extreme hardship to either a US citizen or permanent resident parent or spouse. And I talked about the advanced strategy of having your if your parent does not have a qualifying relative, how you can turn your stepfather or stepmother into a qualifying relative for your parent to be able to get the green card. Okay. So, but if you want me to talk about strategies outside of that for a parent that doesn't have a qualifying relative and you're not able to create a qualifying relative, let me know and I will gladly do another video on that. And that is all I have for you today. As always, if you found this video helpful, if you want to get more information like this from me, again, this channel is all about helping people that want to immigrate to the US, that want a green card, that want citizenship in the US, learn how they can do that and help you understand your options. If that sounds interesting to you, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any of my uploads. If you found this video helpful, please like this video, share this video. And as always, if you are listening to this and you're like, oh, I think I want to file for my parent, they're in this situation, I don't know if the advanced strategy would work, what strategy may work for them, feel free to reach out to me by going to my website, lilylegal.com, or by calling my office at 508-443-1788. And we can schedule a private consultation where I can actually speak with you and your parent and figure out what the best options for you are. And as always, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. If you're watching on the replay, hi there. Ask me your questions. Put them in the comment section. I do go back and look at those. And thank you so much for taking the time. That's all I have for you today. See you later. Yeah, see you next week. So remember, if you want me to do the video on other strategies for parents that do not have qualifying relatives, please let me know in the comments, and I will make sure to do to go ahead and make those videos. Actually, I should mention that this video was inspired by my last video. There was a few comments on that asking for me to do this video. So if there is a video you want me to do, if there's a topic you want me to cover, go ahead and put it in the comments, because I do look at that. I do listen to you, and I do try to give you the information that you want to hear. All right. Thank you again, and I will see you all later. Bye.